My dad never raised his voice, so when he whispered your mom isn't who you think she is during their anniversary toast, I knew my childhood was a lie and everything I loved was about to drown with it. The champagne glass trembled in my hand as 200 guests clinked their flutes, celebrating 40 years of what looked like perfect marriage. Mom stood there in her emerald dress, the one that matched her eyes, smiling that practiced smile I'd seen in every family photo since I could remember. Dad's hand on my elbow was ice cold. "Smile, Emma," he murmured, barely moving his lips. "Wait until everyone leaves. Then open this." He pressed something into my palm, an envelope worn at the edges, with 28A written in his careful handwriting. My fingers closed around it instinctively as Aunt Patricia raised her glass for another toast. "To Robert and Margaret," she gushed, already 3 drinks in. "The couple who proves true love still exists." I wanted to laugh, or scream. Instead, I tucked the envelope into my clutch and raised my glass with everyone else. Max, my golden retriever, sat obediently at my feet, his warm body pressed against my leg like he could sense the earthquake building inside me. The rest of the party blurred together. Conversations about nothing. Fake smiles that made my face ache. Mom floated through the crowd like a queen holding court, occasionally catching my eye and winking like we shared some secret. We did share secrets, just not the kind she thought. By the time the last guest stumbled out at midnight, my nerves were shot. I helped stack plates in the kitchen while Mom hummed some old love song, completely oblivious to the bomb ticking in my purse. "You've been quiet tonight, sweetheart," she said, not looking up from the sink. "Everything okay with Derek?" Derek, my ex-boyfriend who dumped me 2 months ago because I was emotionally unavailable. If only he knew. "We're still broken up, Mom. Such a shame. He had such nice teeth." That was Mom. 40 years of marriage and she still thought dental hygiene was the foundation of lasting love. Dad had already retreated to his study, probably downing his nightly bourbon and pretending to read legal briefs. I escaped to my childhood bedroom, the one they'd kept exactly as I'd left it for college 15 years ago. Pink walls, debate team trophies, and a corkboard covered in photos of friends I barely talked to anymore. Max followed, circling 3 times before settling on his favorite spot by the window. The envelope felt heavier than it should. 28A. What did that even mean? My hands shook as I tore it open. 3 items fell onto my old comforter. A stack of yellowed letters tied with twine, a tiny hospital bracelet, and a document that made my blood freeze. A DNA test, but not mine. The name at the top read Baby Girl Morrison. The date was my birthday, but the time was wrong. 3 hours earlier than what my birth certificate said, and at the bottom in clinical black type, no biological relation to Margaret Ann Whitmore. My mother's maiden name. I grabbed the letters, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. The first one was dated a week after my birth, written in messy cursive, "Maggie, I can't thank you enough." The funeral was beautiful, she looked so peaceful. I know we agreed never to speak of this again, but I had to write, had to thank you. You gave me a reason to keep living when I thought I'd lost everything. I'll keep your secret forever. Love, Janet. Janet Morrison. I knew that name. Mom's college roommate who'd moved away right after I was born. The woman in exactly 2 photos in our family albums, always with her face partially turned away. The next letter was from Mom to someone named Dr. Henley. "As discussed, please ensure all records reflect the agreed upon information. The Morrison family must never know. Payment enclosed." My stomach churned. I ran to my childhood bathroom and barely made it to the toilet before losing every canapé I'd forced down at the party. Max whined outside the door, pawing gently. When I finally emerged shaking and sweaty, one thought consumed me. Mom had somehow faked my birth records. But why? And more importantly, whose baby was I? I had to confront her. Now. If you're still here, hit that like. I need a minute to breathe too. I found her in the master bedroom, removing her jewelry piece by piece. Dad's side of the bed was already turned down, but his reading light was off. He'd probably taken a sleeping pill, his usual method of avoiding difficult conversations. "Mom." She glanced at me in the mirror, her fingers pausing on her pearl necklace. "Emma, honey, you look terrible. Are you feeling sick? Whose baby died?" The pearls clattered onto the vanity. In 34 years I'd never seen my mother's mask slip. But in that moment, watching her face drain of color, I saw her. Really saw her. Not the perfect hostess, not the devoted wife, not the doting mother. Just a woman caught in a lie so massive it had swallowed decades. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, but her voice cracked on the last word. I threw the letters on her bed. Janet Morrison. Your best friend who mysteriously vanished after I was born. Whose baby died, Mom? Hers or yours? She stared at the letters like they were venomous snakes. Her mouth opened and closed several times before she finally whispered, both. The word hit me like a physical blow. I sank onto the bed, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. Both. Mom turned to face me fully, and for the first time in my life, I saw tears streaming down her face without her trying to hide them. My baby girl died 3 hours after birth. Heart defect they couldn't detect back then. Janet's daughter was born the same day, same hospital. But Janet, she tried to kill herself when she found out her husband had been cheating. Took pills while she was in labor. The baby survived, but Janet was in no condition to care for her. She was going to give her up for adoption. My mind raced to catch up. So you, what? Switched us? It wasn't supposed to be permanent. The words exploded out of her. Janet needed time to heal. I needed a baby to hold. Your grandmother, your dad's mother, she controlled everything with that trust fund. If I couldn't produce an heir, she was going to leave everything to your dad's brother. You don't understand what it was like, Emma. The pressure. The constant monitoring. She had private investigators following me to every doctor's appointment. So you stole someone else's baby to keep your inheritance? The words tasted like poison. I saved you. Mom stood up, her whole body trembling. Janet was going to give you to strangers. I gave you a life, the best schools, opportunities you never would have had. And when Janet got better, when she was stable, it was too late. The adoption papers were filed. The birth certificate was changed. Your dad didn't know for 10 years. I thought about Dad's cold hand on my elbow. His whispered warning. 10 years of knowing and saying nothing. Does Janet know I'm alive? Mom's silence was answer enough. I stood on shaking legs. I need to go. Emma, please. You're my daughter. Biology doesn't change that. Doesn't it? I laughed, but it came out cracked and bitter. My whole life is a lie. Every birthday wish, every Mother's Day card, every time you told me I had your eyes or grandma's nose. Lies. The love was never a lie, she said desperately. But I was already walking away, Max at my heels. I grabbed my keys, my purse, the damning envelope, and headed for the door. I needed air, space, distance from this house that suddenly felt like a mausoleum of fake memories. Emma, it's past midnight. Where are you going? I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Yeah. Because the truth was, I had no idea where someone went when they found out they weren't who they thought they were. What would you have done? Drop it in the comments because I literally can't be the only one losing sleep over this. The Oregon rain had started while I was inside, turning the roads into slick mirrors. I drove without thinking, Max whining anxiously in the back seat. My phone buzzed constantly. Mom, Dad, even my brother Colin, who must have gotten the panic call. I pulled into an empty parking lot at Riverside Park, the place where Dad taught me to ride a bike, where Mom had pushed me on swings and told me I could fly if I believed hard enough. All those memories felt tainted now, like old photographs exposed to too much light. The DNA test stared at me from the passenger seat. Baby girl Morrison. But there was another name there, barely visible in the rain-streaked light. The father's name, David Morrison. I'd heard that name before. Where had I heard it? My phone rang again, this time an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? Is this Emma Whitmore? The voice was female, older, carefully controlled. Who is this? My name is Janet Morrison. I believe you have some questions for me. My heart stopped. How did you? Your mother called. She's hysterical. She told me you found out about everything. A pause. I've been waiting 34 years for this call. You knew I was alive? I've known where you were every single day since I signed those papers. Her voice broke slightly. I have a box full of birthday cards I never sent. Graduation announcements I collected from newspapers. I even went to your college graduation. You sat in the back row. The parking lot spun around me. Why didn't you ever? Because I made a deal with your mother. My silence for your safety and happiness. She promised to love you like her own. And whatever else I can say about Margaret, she kept that promise. But I'm not hers. The words ripped out of me. I'm not theirs. I don't even know who I am anymore. You're the same person you were this morning,
Janet said softly.
you're still the girl who graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern. Still the woman who volunteers at the animal shelter every weekend. Your mother didn't lie about that. She sends me updates, photos, stories about your life. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. She had no right. No, Janet agreed. She didn't. But grief makes people do terrible things. And sometimes those terrible things become impossible to undo. Why didn't you fight for me? The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, barely a whisper, because I was 19 alone, and had just tried to kill myself and my unborn baby. The courts would never have given you back. And Margaret, she had already fallen in love with you. I could see it every time she held you. You weren't just a solution to her problem anymore. You were her daughter. Tears burned my eyes. And my biological father, David Morrison, died in a car accident when I was 7 months pregnant. He never knew about you. The affair, the pregnancy, any of it. She paused. But his family, they've always wondered if you wanted to meet them. I don't know what I want. I screamed into the phone, then immediately felt guilty. This woman had suffered too. We were both victims of my mother's desperate choice. That's okay, Janet said gently. You don't have to know. But Emma, there's something else you should know. Something medical. My blood chilled. What? The women in David's family. They have a hereditary condition. It's manageable with proper monitoring, but it affects pregnancy. You need to get tested if you ever plan to have children. You need to get tested if you ever plan to have children. The final piece clicked into place. Mom's constant hovering during my teenage years. The insisted upon gynecologist appointments. The birth control pills she'd pushed on me at 16 for my skin. She'd known. She'd been protecting me from a genetic legacy I didn't even know I carried. I have to go, I managed. Emma, wait. I know this is overwhelming, but if you ever want to talk or meet or just exist in the same space. She took a shaky breath. I've been waiting. I'll keep waiting. I hung up and sobbed. Great body-shaking sobs that made Max climb into the front seat and press his warm body against mine. He licked the tears from my face, whimpering softly, trying to fix something he didn't understand. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof like an accusation. I needed to move, to drive, to do something other than sit in this parking lot drowning in revelations. But as I reached for the gear shift, my phone lit up with a text from Colin. Dad's in the hospital. Car accident on Highway 26. Mom says to come now. No, no, no. I peeled out of the parking lot, hydroplaning slightly on the wet asphalt. The roads blurred through tears and rain. Dad, who'd kept this secret for 10 years. Dad, who'd finally given me the truth. Dad, who'd probably left that party upset, distracted, guilty. The drive to St. Mary's took 15 minutes that felt like hours. I burst through the emergency room doors. Max at my side, not caring about the no pets policy. A nurse started to object, saw my face and simply pointed toward the surgical wing. Mom sat in the waiting room, still in her emerald dress, but with Dad's jacket draped around her shoulders. She looked up when I entered, mascara streaking her cheeks like war paint. The other driver ran a red light, she said mechanically. Your dad swerved to avoid them and hit a tree. They're operating now. Internal bleeding. I sank into a chair across from her, not trusting myself to sit closer. Colin appeared with coffee, his face pale and drawn. He looked between us, clearly sensing the Arctic freeze, but not understanding it. What's going on? Why were you both out driving in this weather? Mom and I locked eyes. For a moment I considered telling him everything, blowing up his world the way mine had been destroyed. But the words died in my throat. One family crisis at a time. Just needed some air, I mumbled. We sat in tense silence for 3 hours. Max stayed pressed against my legs, occasionally nosing my hand when my breathing got too shallow. Finally a surgeon in scrubs appeared, looking exhausted. Mrs. Whitmore, your husband is out of surgery. It was touch and go, but he's stable. He's asking for you. His eyes swept over us. Just immediate family, for now. Mom stood on unsteady legs. Then she looked at me, and something in her expression cracked. Come on, Emma, he's asking for you too. Mom, Colin started confused. Both of you, she clarified quickly. He wants both his children. The word his hung in the air like a challenge. But I followed her anyway, because whatever else had been revealed tonight, Robert Whitmore had raised me, had taught me to ride that bike, cheered at every debate tournament, walked me down the aisle at my practice wedding, when I was 7 and determined to marry Max the First, our old retriever. He looked small in the hospital bed, tubes and wires turning him into something fragile. His eyes found mine immediately. Emma, his voice was raspy, weak. I'm sorry, should have told you years ago. Dad, don't, just rest. No. He gripped my hand with surprising strength. Need you to know. The day I found out I was going to leave, had the papers drawn up. But then you called, remember? You were 24, working at that nonprofit, called crying because you'd lost funding for the after-school program. I remembered. The worst day of my professional life. You needed me, he continued. Needed your dad. And I realized biology didn't matter. You were my daughter. Always had been. Always would be. Tears slipped down my cheeks. But you still gave me the envelope. Because you deserved the truth. Even if it came too late. His eyes shifted to Mom. We both failed you there. But the love, Emma, the love was always real. A monitor beeped. A nurse bustled in, checking vitals. He needs rest. 5 more minutes. Colin stood frozen by the door, processing fragments of a conversation that made no sense. I'd have to tell him eventually. Another conversation. Another world shattered. But for now, I held my father's hand. The man who'd raised me, loved me, lied to me, and finally set me free with an envelope marked 28A. I met her, I whispered. Janet, she called. Mom made a sound like a wounded animal. Dad squeezed my hand. And, he asked. And I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. That's okay, he said, echoing Janet's words. You don't have to know. Just be our daughter for tonight. Everything else can wait. I nodded, unable to speak. Because he was right. The DNA tests, the switched babies, the inheritance schemes and desperate choices made 34 years ago. It could all wait. Tonight, I just needed to be here, in this room, with the family that raised me. The family built on lies, but held together by something stronger, even if I wasn't sure what that something was anymore. 3 months later, I stood outside a small cafe in Portland, Max's leash wrapped around my hand. Through the window, I could see her, Janet Morrison, my biological mother, sitting at a corner table with a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. We'd exchanged emails, phone calls, photos of the life I might have had. She'd sent me pictures of David, my biological father. I had his eyes, his stubborn chin, his family's hereditary condition, that meant any pregnancy would be high risk. Mom and I hadn't spoken since Dad came home from the hospital. She'd tried, leaving voicemails that grew increasingly desperate. Colin knew everything now, and in typical Colin fashion, had decided to pretend nothing had changed. He still called Mom every Sunday, still brought his kids for dinner. But I couldn't, not yet. Dad and I texted, short messages about safe topics. He was in physical therapy, learning to walk without a limp, learning to live with the weight of shared secrets finally in the open. Derek had called once, having heard through the grapevine about my family drama. He'd wanted to get coffee, to see if we could try again. I'd said no. How could I be emotionally available to anyone when I didn't even know who I was? Max tugged on his leash, eager to go inside. He'd been my only constant through everything, the one relationship that didn't need redefining. Janet saw me through the window, and raised her hand in a small wave. She looked nervous, hopeful, scared, all the things I felt. I could walk away, go back to my apartment, my job, my life built on a foundation of lies, but still standing. Or I could walk through that door, and meet the woman who gave birth to me, gave me away, and spent 34 years living with that choice. This one hit close. If this shook you even half as much as it shook me, hit subscribe. I've got more family drama you won't believe coming. Max made the decision for me, pulling toward the door with determination. Because dogs didn't care about DNA tests or family secrets. They just knew when someone needed comfort. I opened the door, the bell chiming softly. Janet stood, her hands shaking slightly. Hi, I said. Hi, she replied. And for the first time in 3 months, I smiled. A real smile. Because maybe Dad was right. Maybe I didn't need to know who I was right away. Maybe I just needed to be present. In this moment, with all its messy complexity, Max settled at my feet as I sat down, and Janet's eyes filled with tears. He's beautiful, she said. He knows, I replied. And we both laughed. A small sound, but a beginning. Outside, the Portland rain started again, washing the city clean. And inside, two women who shared DNA, but not history, started the long, careful process of building something new from the ruins of secrets finally told. I still didn't know if I could forgive Mom. Still didn't know if Janet could ever be more than a stranger who looked like me. Still didn't know who Emma Whitmore really was when the lies were stripped away. But I was starting to think maybe that was okay. Maybe identity wasn't about blood, or birth certificates, or the stories our parents told us. Maybe it was about the choices we made when the truth finally found us. And today, I chose to stay. If this story left your jaw on the floor like it did mine, hit that like button, smash subscribe for more stories like this, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Could you forgive a mother for doing this?